My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway. 70.
I was against the war in Iraq, just so you put it out.
The record shows otherwise,
the record
but why
does not show
why
that.
is your judgment
The record shows that I'm right. When I did an interview with Howard Stern, very lightly, first time anyone's asked me that, I said, and Sean Hannity said, and he called me the other day, and I spoke to him about it. He said, you were totally against the war because he was for the war.
Why is your judgment better than...
And that was before the war started. Sean Hannity said very strongly to me and other people, he's willing to say, but nobody wants to call him, I was against the war. One of your compatriots said, you know, whether it was before or right after, Trump was definitely, because if you read this article, there's no doubt. But if somebody, and I'll ask the press, if somebody would call up Sean Hannity, this was before the war started, he and I used to have arguments about the war. I said it's a terrible and a stupid thing. It's going to destabilize the Middle East, and that's exactly what it's done.
Over the past 2 years, what began as a series of peaceful protests against the repressive regime of Bashar al-Assad has turned into a brutal civil war. Over 100,000 people have been killed. Millions have fled the country. In that time, America has worked with allies to prevent...
Colonel Gaddafi needs to step down from power and leave.
Obama spoke as rebels fought running battles with government forces.
There is a danger of a stalemate that over time could be bloody.
Off Libya and the Pentagon to draw up a full range of options, including for enforcing a no-fly zone.
What I want to make sure of is that the United States has full capacity to act potentially rapidly.
This marks the end of a long and painful chapter for the people of Libya, who now have the opportunity to determine their own destiny in a new and democratic Libya. For 4 decades, the Gaddafi regime ruled the Libyan people with an iron fist. Basic human rights were denied, innocent civilians were detained, beaten, and killed, and Libya's wealth was squandered. The enormous potential of the Libyan people was held back, and terror was used as a political weapon. Today, we can definitively say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end. The last major regime strongholds have fallen. The new government is consolidating the control over the country, and one of the world's longest-serving dictators is no more. 1 year ago, the notion of a free Libya seemed impossible. But then the Libyan people rose up. But I have resisted calls for military action. The situation profoundly changed, though, on August 21st. A crime against humanity and a violation of the laws of war. The United States presented a powerful case that the Syrian government was the people who are fleeing Syria are They are the most vulnerable as a consequence of civil war and strife. They are parents, they are children, they are orphans. And it is very important, and I was glad to see that this was affirmed again and again by the G20, that we do not close our hearts to these victims of such violence.
And nobody really knows why we went into Iraq. The Iraqis did not knock down. It was not Saddam Hussein that knocked down the World Trade Center. Okay,
that's just what you said was they lied. They said there were weapons of mass destruction, and there were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass.
Well, there are a lot of people that think that. There were a lot of people that think, look, bottom line, there were no weapons of mass destruction. They said there are weapons of mass destruction. I was against the war. It may have been the worst decision going into Iraq, may have been the worst decision anybody has made, any president has made in the history of this country. That's how bad it is, okay? You look at what happened. I mean, look at Libya. Look at Iraq. Iraq used to be no terrorists. He would kill the terrorists immediately. It was like, now it's the Harvard of terrorism. Iraq. If you look at Iraq from years ago, I'm not saying he was a nice guy. He was a horrible guy. But it was a lot better than it is right now. Right now, Iraq is a training ground for terrorists. Right now, Libya, nobody even knows Libya. Frankly, there is no Iraq and there is no Libya. It's all broken up. They have no control. Nobody knows what's going on.
The world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
and Gaddafi in power?
100%. Now, as far as Assad is concerned,
what about the human rights abuses?
Let's talk about, well, you don't think they're happening now? They're worse now than they ever were. People are getting their heads chopped off. They're being drowned. Right now, they're far worse than they were ever under Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. I mean, look what happened. Libya is a catastrophe. You look at our ambassador as an example, okay? Libya is a disaster. Iraq is a disaster. Syria is a disaster. The whole Middle East. And it all blew up around Hillary Clinton and around Barack Obama. It all blew up. Now, one thing about Assad,